Hello and welcome to another video. This time we're going to be talking about Rosterpocalypse. Obviously, we're in the Overwatch League off-season now, and we're going from 2021, which was a pretty successful season for a lot of teams, going into 2022, and it's been kind of crazy. So I'm going to be doing multiple videos throughout the entire offseason going into 2022 season about player contract statuses. We're going to keep updating, talking about the teams as we get closer to, the next season and seeing what's going to turn out. Overwatch League has done an awesome job of coming out and they're officially this is where all the players stand in terms of contractual standing. So we just recently hit the deadline for when teams had to make the decision between re-signing a player. So if they were contractually had their options or whether or not they were going into free agency, that point is passed. So every player's sort of status right now is public and known to everyone. We don't know where these free agents are going, where some of these open-ended players are going to end up. There are rumors, obviously lots of rumors on Reddit if you want to check those out. We're not going to be really speaking to those too much. Obviously, at the end of the day, they're rumors. There is some really cool things that are potentially in the works. And as time goes on, we're going to slowly work out what idea each of these are going to go for in terms of roster. Obviously, just off the cuff, we obviously have the San Francisco Shock essentially dropping all of their players. We have Shanghai Dragons, for the most part, keeping their roster. Dallas Fuel pretty much keeping themselves together, except for JXA. So we're going to go through all that, and we'll be able to see their contractor status and really sort of work out what is so, I guess, what is important for each of these teams, and also what to remember when we see all these things. Because just because a player is a free agent or a team has allowed them to explore their options does not mean they are going to not be signed to the team. And that is highlighted pretty well here. So let's just get started and start talking about the teams. Actually, before we start that, obviously we're going into 5v5 as well. Okay, so that is a big change then, why I think you're seeing a lot of overhauls from a lot of these teams. We don't know what Overwatch 2 is going to look like. They're going to be on that 5v5 status. Most teams looks like they're trying to bring two tanks, a main tank and an off tank, into the season. But a lot of teams are also using this opportunity to rebuild their team, i.e. San Francisco Shock. So keep that in mind as we're going down the list as well. As they just said here, free agency began on October 9th, which means that everyone who is going to be on free agency is there. And this is an important thing to highlight. Okay, so if it says under existing contract, that means they are already signed with the current team for the 2022 season under a previous agreement. What that essentially means that when they signed their contract in 2021, it was like a 2-year contract. So it was a 2021 and a 2022 contract. So therefore, they were always under a contract and they are staying with that team. Under new contract means they've already signed a new agreement with the team. So we haven't seen a lot of new contracts be signed for a lot of these teams unless they were a returning player to those teams. A lot of those other contracts and new contracts are going to come out later in the offseason because, trials, planning, everyone's sort of free agents are just sort of testing the water, see where they want to end up. 2022 option exercise. So instead of a 2-year contract, what a lot of teams have is they're called 1+1s or 2+1s or something like that. What that essentially means is that when you sign the contract, let's say I signed a contract for Valiant on a 1+1. For the first season, we've agreed to that contract. For the +1, which would be going into this next year, I don't have as a player the option to say I am guaranteed for this team. The team can say we're exercising your option, which means that we are signing you again for the deal that was signed a year ago. Or they can be like, we don't want you, we're not exercising your option, and they will drop you from the roster. Okay, so that is something that is beneficial, obviously, for management, that they have the freedom to drop players or sign the players based on those 1+1s. And obviously, that comes down to contract negotiations and stuff like that. And a lot of players did not get their option picked up, so that makes them a free agent. So free agent, the team option was declined for 2022. The team decided not to keep that player for 2022. Generally, if that happens, that player will not be returning to the team that their option did not get exercised from. There's a different form of free agency, which a lot of players are under, and a lot of people are panicking because of it. Free agency, where your existing contract expired, means that you're currently under contract with no one. So even if your current team that you just played for in the 2021 season still wanted you, you are still technically a free agent. A lot of players will renegotiate with the team that they're on if they were happy there, but we actually see a lot of players talking about how their contract is up, they're into free agency now, and they're testing the waters, right? Like Houston Outlaws has allowed, a lot of their players to sort of explore other options and sort of try out with other teams. That doesn't mean that they're not going to come back to the rosters that they're originally on. They're essentially just a free agent like anyone is who doesn't have a contract, and they have freedom to do whatever they want. Does that make sense to everyone? I know a lot of people aren't up to date with like how contracts essentially work in, Overwatch League or just in competition in general. Does that everyone agree? Chat, you good? We're all good here? Everyone understands that these are essentially all the options that could happen throughout these off seasons. How do team trades work? Team trades have nothing to do with what we're talking about now. The only thing that makes team trades important is for a team to trade someone, they have to be under contract, right? So if they are existing under contract, and we can actually use this right here. Yaki right now, and when we scroll down, we will see that Yaki for the Florida Mayhem is the only player still signed to that roster. That is under the assumption that he is going to be traded. A lot of people assume the only reason he's there is so that he will be traded later on. Because it seems like Florida Mayhem want to go into a Western degree. That's essentially the rumors. But Florida Mayhem wants to keep Yaki, who's such a valuable player, who I'm sure they could trade for other players or essentially trade for money. That is why they are keeping him onto the roster, and that's the only reason he's there. They're confident that they will be able to trade him off of the team. So they're willing to take the risk of signing him under a new contract under the basis that they're sure that they can trade him. That's how trades work. Do contracts affect players' pay or simply team membership? Yes, contracts have everything to do with player, team membership, all that kind of stuff. When you are signing a contract, that has everything to do with pay and playing with the team. And players should be careful when they're signing contracts because, you can get signed into bad contracts. And we've seen it historically throughout the, not as much in Overwatch, but other esports where players sign these really long contracts, right? These players sign these 3-year contracts, which in esports is forever, for low money, and then they become really good, but you can't renegotiate your pay or anything like that once you've signed that contract. So that is generally why you see a lot of Rosterpocalypse from year to year, is because Overwatch, I generally haven't seen many long form contracts. Personally, I can say for me, I signed a 2+1 at some point. So that is that's a really long contract. So that would have been 2 guaranteed years with a +1, right? Where the team could make the option to sign me for another year. So there are long contracts, but they'll usually have that option in there somewhere. Carpe was the longest one, if I remember correctly. And that might have been probably after 2018 season, or maybe going into 2018 season. That could make sense where they sign these long form contracts. All right, let's start talking about the updates. So now we know how all the contracts work, so let's talk about the teams. We're going to start with the Atlanta Reign. We're just going to go down this website. This website is publicly available for everyone. It's on the Overwatch League website. If you want to check it out, I believe it'll be consistently being updated as things change. But yeah, I'm not going to promise that. I don't control the thing. So Atlanta Reign, Edison is a free agent now. So his existing contract expired. So essentially the contract he was on was thing, and Atlanta Reign hasn't re-signed him as of yet. He's a free agent to go to any team he wants. But so far as we know, Atlanta got dropped. Kai was signed to a new contract, and Pelican's option was exercised. We need to keep this in mind when we talk about this. There's been rumors that Pelican is being traded to a different team, and that the Atlanta Reign is going to go for a fully Western team. So there is rumors that Iris, Edison, and Pelican are all they're not going to be on the team next year for the Atlanta Reign, and that they're going to be signing other players. Right now, the rumor is that, at least the guessing game that everyone's playing is Nero has said that he is being signed to a new team. And a lot of people think he's going to Atlanta Reign to replace Pelican for this team. So Kai has a new contract. Gator and Hawk both under new contracts, so they've been fully signed for this upcoming year. And Masa option has been declined, which is interesting because that makes it that look like that the Atlanta Reign don't want Masa going into next year, which is surprising. I think Masa had a phenomenal year. I think he played quite well. I was surprised that they aren't picking him up. Going back to the rumor mill of what we had, Halo also highlighted that there is rumors that American Tornado support line will be the players that are replacing for the Atlanta Reign. That is Ultraviolet and OG. They are rumored to become this backline, and that would make it a fully Western lineup. So overall, if we're going off of rumors and just speculation right now, it would be Kai Nero in the DPS line, Gator Hawk as the tank line where there's only one, and then the back line would be Ultraviolet OG. Oh yeah, and not OGE, OJEE. He is a contenders player. These guys have both been nuts for a long time. They're actually just starting to come of age. So they've been very good for a long time, but this is the first time they're really coming of age. So it's a pretty nasty lineup. I think that would be probably one of the best Western lineups that you could formulate for the available players. That's actually a really nasty team if they pull that off. But obviously this is still early days. Lots of things can fall through through the cracks. Lots of contracts can fall through. Someone can give them a better offer. We don't know, right? So let's keep moving on because we have 20 teams to go through. So the Boston Uprising, Color Hex has been is a free agent now. His contract expired. I'm 37 is also a free agent because his contract expired. Valentine is being signed again for the Boston Uprising with his 22 option being exercised. Fusion's retired. Gabe Bullshit is still under a contract, so he must have signed a 2-year contract when he came into the league. Punk's option was exercised as well. So it seems like they're going in with Gabe Bullshit and Punk right now. I would be surprised if Boston Uprising signed a third tank going into 5v5 where only one tank is available. And I guess they're just hoping that one of them works in 5v5. So once again, Punk's going to be playing for his spot, but he had a great year this most recent year. And I think Punk, I think when Gabe Bullshit got signed, everyone was like, yo, rip Punk. And then Punk was just like, nah, fuck that. I'm a boss, and he actually absolutely proved that he deserves that spot in that team. So I'm glad his option has been exercised going into next year. Stan 1 was dropped. His option was declined, so they essentially don't want him. When options are declined, that essentially means that the team doesn't want them anymore. Faith's option got exercised, so he is staying with Valentine. And Myeonbong, which is actually a really interesting one, his option got declined going into next season. This doesn't make any sense to me. And I think everyone can agree. This makes me think that Myeonbong wasn't interested on staying on the Boston Uprising and then he wanted to go to a new team. Because there is no way in hell the Boston Uprising don't want Myeonbong. He is such a good player year after year. Can options be declined by players? No. As far as I'm aware, there are no player contracts that they have the option to extend themselves. I've never heard of a player who has been given the opportunity where they've negotiated their contract, where it's like a 1+1, but the option is for the player. Maybe Myeonbong had that in his contract. Maybe people have negotiated that into it, but I haven't heard of anything like that. So usually if the option has been declined, it is usually team side. And I expect that. But as I said, I think Myeonbong has probably come to the team and said he wants to move on, and they might have respected that. We don't really know. Actually, that's an important thing to talk about with Pelican as well. Selfless Brad, actually, who is the GM, I believe is his official title of the Atlanta Reign. Wait, am I mixing up? Oh, someone from the Atlanta Reign, a Lizzle thing. I remember seeing this where he said, he made a tweet that said when head coach, was it? I think this might have been Selfless Brad because who tweeted this. Either that or it was the GM. It was Brad. Yeah, I think it was. He came out and tweeted, when a player comes to you with a heartfelt message saying that they want to move on, you have to respect that. And I think he was talking about Pelican. The fact that they are planning on trading Pelican, it has been rumored, and that means that I respect this a lot from the Atlanta Reign. Obviously, they want to keep Pelican. He was the rookie of the year in the 2021 season. Great player, but player came to them, said that they wanted to move on. I'm sure Pelican has friends on Korean teams, and he wants to move on, go to an all Korean team, maybe somewhere he feels more comfortable. Maybe for health reasons, all that kind of stuff. So I respect Atlanta Reign, and it seems like Pelican is on the way out. So they have talked about that, which I respect. And it seems like the same thing is happening at Boston Uprising. Because, as I said, I don't see a reason why they would have traded Myeonbong or not wanted Myeonbong. So Chengdu Hunters. Chengdu Hunters didn't actually change a lot. Your boy Jimmy is coming back for 2022 season. And I hope with the season going into 5v5, the game opening up, hit scan, hopefully meta, Jimmy will fuck. I hope. We all here believe that Jimmy might fuck. It wasn't really a hit scan meta. It really felt like when Jimmy played, he was getting shoehorned in to play that Widow, and he just not really in a position to succeed. So hopefully, Jimmy will pop off in 2022. Jimmy 2022, I'm feeling good about it. In case that doesn't work, though, they are bringing back Jinmu and Leave once again. So they're under, they actually re-signed Jinmu and Leave under new contracts while Jimmy was on an existing contract. Terry Cookie is also coming back, which is surprising. Terry Cookie didn't play a map, if I'm correct, this entire season. He's under existing contract. Seems like they're keeping him. He did. He played one map. Oh, I might have missed that. But he played a map. Not very memorable, but yeah, it seems like they're keeping them. Among is now a free agent. His contract expired, and they decided. It seems like he's looking for new teams. I would be surprised if they picked him up. It seems like they're pretty happy with Gaga. He's under existing contract, and Late Young is a free agent now. His option has been declined. Didn't I see a Late Young post that he's retiring? Why do I feel like I saw a post that Late Young said he was retiring? Am I crazy? Liz, help me out here. I want to say that Late Young retired. Yeah, I want to say I remember that as well. It doesn't say so here, but his option has been declined anyway. But it doesn't say it on it doesn't say it on here, but you know, it is what it is. He's not going to be on the Chengdu Hunters. Liz will fact check for us right now. 1987 and Monk are going to be on the team again under existing contract. Nisha is under existing contract. And interestingly enough, Yveltal option got exercised as well. Yveltal's interesting because it felt like there was a lot of drama with Yveltal towards the end of the season in the playoffs. They were very public about the criticism of Yveltal that he wasn't putting his best foot forward with the team. So they have exercised the option though, so he will be playing for them. They will be playing him under the options. So I have him under free agent. Okay, maybe Late Young is still trying to play, and he is a free agent. We'll see. Time will tell. I think it is hard for a lot of these players that there's not a lot of places that these players can go because Chengdu Hunters really is the only Chinese roster that's out there. Obviously, Spark could go heavily in that direction, and that would be kind of baller if we saw them go that direction, but you know, only time will tell. All right, Dallas Fuel. Dallas Fuel's not very interesting. Doha option exercise. They're going to be keeping Doha again. They're going to be keeping Sparkle. Xe is a free agent. His option got declined. Obviously, he was under contract with Dallas Fuel. Had the injury, so we didn't see him. But I believe Xe is trying to join a team, if I remember correctly, Liz. I think he came out with an LFT post, and he is actually looking to join other teams for 2022 season. So he is LFT. You're not very interesting. Well, Tasmo, maybe you spice something up. You know, maybe throw in an extra player here or there. As I said, I'm a tank. I'm almost 4100. Just throw me in. I'll hang out with Fearless and Hanbin. I'll teach them a trick or two. So let me know, Tasmo. Emails are always open on stream. Let me know. Pine is a free agent. His option got declined. Pine has had some interesting tweets, and his bio has looked a little, I guess, unfortunate. He doesn't seem very confident. It doesn't seem like I think his Twitter bio just said done. So it feels like we're not going to see much Pine unless something heavily changes. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see him get an opportunity on Dallas Fuel, but you know, it is what it is. I said throughout the entire season I didn't expect Pine to play, and that was the unfortunate reality. Fearless and Hanbin options exercise, so they'll be trading playtime. As I said, this is the smart thing to do by Dallas Fuel. You have a great main tank, you have a great off tank. We have no idea what tank looks like in Overwatch 2. Better just sign two great ones. And then Fielder, Jexay, Fielder and Repel. Actually, no, I remember this. Fielder's option gets exercised, so he is going to stay as a flex support. I think he was great throughout the year. Honestly, a very underrated flex support throughout the year. People seem to forget how good Fielder is. Jexa is a free agent, which is a really interesting one for me. I thought Jexa was really good as a main support. Also another underrated player, I think, for Dallas. Obviously, we have no idea what was happening internally on Dallas, whether the team didn't want Jexa wanted to leave, all those kind of things, but his option was declined. So Jexa is a free agent. So of the 6 players that had success in the 2021 season. The only one moving on is Jexay. Obviously, Rappel was on the lineup, but he went on to retire. I'm sure it's hard to sit on the bench for an entire year. So Rappel is retired. So Dallas Fuel, for the most part, looks exactly the same, except for Jexay. So there are some interesting options for main support out there. Maybe Dallas is looking at, greener, better players, maybe developing a new player that they think they can get more from. Who knows? But yeah, as you're saying, Conclave time, who is an upgrade to Jexay? In my opinion, there aren't many out there. I think Jexay's probably top 5 main supports in the league. I think you can put a couple of players ahead of him, but I really like Jexay's main support. I think he had a lot of playmaking moments, and I think he is one of the main reasons for the success of Dallas Fuel. But hey, you never know what's going on internally with these teams. And I will bring this up again now, because I talk about this all the time on stream. If something doesn't make sense to you of why a player is dropped, why a player is signed, why a player is all these kind of things not playing, you generally don't have all the information. There is a lot of things that are going on with these teams in terms of coaching, synergy, all these kind of stuff, burnout, etc. Something doesn't make sense, you don't have all the options. You don't have to blame Dallas Fuel. As much as we all want to blame Tasmo for them dropping Jexay, there's a lot more going on around that, and we don't have all the information. So you don't have to freak out about these kind of things. It'll be fine. Just blame me? Okay, there you go. Green light. Just blame Tasmo. Easy enough. Problem solved. All right, let's keep moving along. Florida Mayhem, let's talk about them. So BQ, this is a pretty big one. Let's start this off with, there are rumors that the Florida Mayhem are dropping their fully Korean lineup, and that they will be going Western. They're going back to a Western lineup in 2022. With that said, the initial reports were saying that they were going to sign a lot of American Tornado, if not all of American Tornado. But if you remember just before, we said that the American Tornado backline is going to be going to the Atlanta Reign. So, fuck knows. I have no idea. I have no idea what's going on here, but proof is in the pudding. The BQB's option declined. Checkmate is a free agent, contract expired. Yaki is staying, and we talked about him earlier, that we believe the only reason he's still in this lineup is so he can be traded, because Yaki is a hot commodity. He's a great player, very flexible. Wouldn't be surprised if they were looking to trade him. For tanks, decline the option of OG and Gargoyle. Support, decline the options of Slime and Gangnam Jin. Essentially, the only person on the active roster for the Florida Mayhem right now is Yaki. There's also another rumor going around that head coach Kuki is potentially going to NYXL. Take that with a grain of salt, but that also adds to the narrative that Florida Mayhem is blowing it up, all puns intended, and starting a new lineup. So, what does option exercise? Option exercise means they agreed to the option. So instead of option declined, they exercise the option, which means they agreed to sign them for another year. So Slime retired. Yeah, as I said, I'm losing track of everyone who's retired and who hasn't. I'm sorry if this thing is not up to date. Yeah. We'll see. Mayhem are going budget. Hey, that's work for everyone else, right? All right, moving on to the Guangzhou Charge. Choice of One is coming back under existing contract, which is good. Choice of One, I think were great for the Charge. I don't think were any of the issues with their woes. Kaylee became a free agent with a contract expired. I think that's not surprising to anyone. Kaylee just didn't perform very well this year. It really seemed like they had communication issues every time Kaylee was in. Kaylee had a great aim, just not able to work within the team. It would be interesting to see how Kaylee would do on a team like the Chengdu Hunters or something like that, right? Krong is coming back under existing contract. Jihan is a free agent, and Rio is also under existing contract. So Krong and Rio are coming back with, obviously had long-form contracts. Kariv and Mandu have both had their contracts expired and will not be coming back, and they are free agents. Maybe Charge will sign them back. We don't know, but I'd be surprised. I don't think Kariv or Mandu really had a great season. I love my boy Kariv, but he definitely struggled this year. He came out with a tweet saying that he still wants to play. He still has, still wants the game. So hopefully someone will pick Kariv up. So the Charge is kind of interesting. They have Choice of One, Eileen, Krong, and Rio. I think that's a pretty good core to build around going into next year. There's actually a lot of good free agent flex supports. I think the biggest issue Charge is going to have is trying to convince good players to come to their team. You know what I mean? When you have teams like NYXL with a rebuild, San Francisco Shock with everything being wide open, for Charge, I think it's going to be like, you know, when these great flex supports have a lot of great options, Charge is not the most attractive one out of all of them. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with the Charge. All right, so the Hangzhou Spark, which is a team that had a really disappointing season and a little all over the place. So Architect, his 2022 option has been exercised, so Architect will be coming back. So Min Soo, contract expired and becomes a free agent. So Min Soo honestly never really made sense to me. He also just didn't really play much. It was kind of a weird situation. But Shai's 2022 option exercised. I think Architect Shai is a great DPS duo. The only thing that I have is like, I'm worried about Architect. I feel like there are so many great flex DPS players in the game that I'm worried that Architect just isn't it anymore. He really needs to have a redemption year this upcoming year because he hasn't impressed me ever since he joined the Spark back in the middle of 2020 and then 2021 really hasn't really performed that well. So interested and surprised that the Spark are taking a risk on him, but that means that he's probably doing something right for the team and that they are happy with him. So, you know, that speaks louder than anything else. But now option gets exercised. Gushui is under existing contract and Liege is under existing contract. So Spark have 3 tanks. They have to work it out. It's kind of crazy that Liege is going to have another year. But seeing as Liege didn't play, he was saying that he was having... he spoke out himself saying that he was having issues mentally. Didn't get much, it didn't much further in depth with that explanation, but we didn't get to see Liege. Liege was hyped up to be like one of those big main tanks coming into the league, and he just didn't really play. But Bernal was pretty solid, and Gushui is Gushui. So it'll be interesting to see what they do, and if they stick with these 3 tanks, maybe they'll drop someone. You don't really need 3 tanks when you only have 1 tank coming in, you know, able to be played, but we'll see. Coldest became a free agent. IDK became a free agent. Mika became a free agent. They declined IDKs. I believe IDK retired. If I remember correctly, I don't know if I'm mixing IDK up with someone or if we went LFT, but yeah, they have no supports for the Hangzhou Spark, which is funny because they had lots of supports and now they have no supports. It'll be interesting to see who they can get to join the Spark. You're going to see a common theme where a lot of teams have main support and flex support options open. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see a couple of these players come back. Maybe on different teams, but a couple of these players still come back. IDK still LFT. Interesting. And yeah, I think that's actually a good point that you bring up, Scrabbles out as well. Guangzhou Charge, Hangzhou Spark, NYXL, Seoul Dynasty, all those kind of teams, they need good coaches. It feels like there's been coaching woes on all of these teams for so long. They need coaches more than they need players, and I would rather see them get good coaches and then build off of that than getting these good players. There actually are a lot of players, as Liz brings up as well, that want to go into coaching roles. Toby and Rascal both are retired and said they want to go into coaching roles. Maybe we'll see that coming up for the teams. Houston Outlaws is an interesting one because they have no players. Dante, Happy, KSF, Crimzo, Jake, all had their contracts expired, so they became free agents, and they haven't actively re-signed any of these players. On top of that, Dreamer, Django, and Juby all had their options declined. Wait. Calm down. Everyone stop freaking out. All had their options declined, which leaves Lone Piggy as the only signed player to the Houston Outlaws. Just because the contract expires does not mean they're dropping all these players, but this is how how Houston has negotiated their contracts. None of their players are under contract. Maybe the Houston Outlaws players are happy with the team and they will come back, but all of the players have come out and publicly said on Twitter that they are looking at options and trying other things out. We have no idea how that's going, what's happening with Houston Outlaws. We have no idea. Moral of the story is we have no idea what's happening with Houston Outlaws. Harsha, who was a co-head coach for the team, has retired from coaching in Overwatch. So they only had, who's their head coach now? Jungbuck is now the head coach, the lone head coach of the Houston Outlaws. We don't know what's happening with Jake. So obviously Jake was a coach player for the Houston Outlaws. I don't think I've seen Jake tweet anything. Liz, you would know better than me. Has Jake tweeted anything that he's free agent, that he's looking around? He hasn't said anything. Yeah, Jake has been quiet. So yeah, most of these players have said LFT though. I'm pretty sure every other player said LFT. KSF retired from Overwatch. It seemed like he was saying that he was avoiding saying that he was going to go play Valorant, but I'm pretty sure KSF is going to play Valorant, and I think he would be good at Valorant. So, we'll see. All right, so that's Houston Outlaws. No updates really, except that nobody's there except for Piggy. All right, Los Angeles Gladiators. LA Gladiators are one of the few teams that are staying pretty consistent. Obviously, Birdering retired. Saj, honestly, a GOAT. Incredible player. Had incredible performances from the beginning of time, even before Overwatch League. Won 2018 with the London Spitfire. And just, I remember after the 2019 season, everyone was like, Birdering, we think he's washed. Like, everyone was like, Birdering's washed. We think he's given up on the game. And fucking hell, we were wrong. Birdering in 2020 and 2021 was just absolutely incredible. Put on great performances. And just, it seemed like he was burnt out and that he's going to retire. I wish the best for him. I'm excited to see what he does onwards, and I wish him the best of luck. But yeah, I'll miss you. I haven't forgiven you for killing me in 2018 on Widow all the time. Kevster, under a new contract, staying. So Gladiators fucking mopped him up really quick. I think Kevster's probably on a dumb high contract, if we're being honest. Gladiators threw him the bag, I hope, and he absolutely deserves that bag. He was incredible that back half of that year. And honestly, probably for a lot of people, an MVP candidate going into next season. Mira is in free agency now, not too surprising. Contract expired, we didn't get to see too much of him. Muse became a free agent and his option got declined, which means that the Gladiators do not want him. Space, interestingly enough as well, is a free agent. He came out with a tweet saying, I am, as a player, I am exploring my options. This doesn't mean Gladiators don't want me. He's just playing the field. Space is trying to get as much money as he can, see if anyone else has anything spicy going on. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Space go back to the Gladiators. And especially if they're like, hey man, we want you to be the main tank and be the guy. That's sort of the vibe that I get from everything that's happening. Moth option declined. Moth is a free agent. Isn't too surprising. Moth didn't really get to play too much. Someone please sign fucking Moth. Houston Outlaws. Sign Moth. Someone sign Moth. He's so good. And it was disappointing we didn't get to see Moth play. But they're keeping Shu and Scoot, which isn't surprising. They seemed really happy with Shu and Scoot in this season. They played really well as well. So that's not too surprising. But I hope we get to see Moth go on to a new team. Can anyone afford Moth? Well, I think if you're realistic and you're Moth, and this is just, I assume Moth is not going to get the same kind of contract that he got coming out of the two-time championship shock. Who knows? Maybe he can negotiate though, because nothing, like, it's not like Moth played badly in the season. Every time Moth played, I think he played pretty well. It's just, it was a Brig meta. Moth's Brig's fine. Scoot is just really good. Scoot was the best, and I think that's, you can't overlook Moth for, the unfortunate season. Can Scoot play Lucio? That becomes the question that you talk about for the LA Gladiators. Can they just get away with playing Shu Skewed? They might need a Lucio. Lucio might become really prominent. So we'll see. We'll see. LA Valiant. Oh yeah, let's talk about the Valiant. This will be fun. Okay. All of their contracts expired. Pog champion. No idea what's going on with LA Valiant. Is LA Valiant even going to be a team next year? Don't even know. Are they going to have a Western team? Are they going to have a Chinese team? Don't know. Are they going to have any team that is going to have any chance of winning matches? Don't know. London Spitfire. This is an interesting one. they seem to have kept a lot of their pieces that they really enjoyed, that they liked throughout the season. They kept Shax and Sparker, right? Which is interesting, and it's worth noting, right? So they signed a completely new, when we saw in 2021, London Spitfire signed a new team. By looking at how it is of options either declined or exercised, it seems like they signed everyone to a 1+1. So that gave the freedom of the London Spitfire to bring back all of these players if they wanted. Obviously, they had a pretty brutal season, but they did keep Shax and Sparker. The only two people they kept. Everyone else was dropped. Reaper retired. I like Shax and Sparker. I think they would have been the two pieces that I would want to keep. My only problem with Shax and Sparker is that they kind of play the same thing. Is that just me? Like, they kind of have the exact same hero pools, which kind of worries me because you don't want two of the same player. When you only have two players, you don't want them playing the same thing. So I do question whether or not this was a great option. Maybe it would have been better off to keep Sparker. He seemed to have a lot of promise, but then you don't really want to drop Shax. Maybe they're signing both of them and trying to trade one of them. But they're both kind of hit scan tracer players for the most part. That's kind of where, like, their wheelhouse. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the London Spitfire do, but they did drop everyone. I think the only player that I maybe would have wanted to see them keep would have been Molfig. I think Molfig was actually quite solid on this team, but hey, you know what? When you want to blow it up, you want to blow it up. The rumors are that we've heard is that Christopher, a coach for the Philadelphia Fusion for the last ever, I think he's been around, is potentially moving to become the head coach of the new London Spitfire team, which makes sense. I think he's English. He might come back and try and revitalize the team. Maybe they're gonna keep it European. We'll see. They can only really go upwards from here. They had a pretty brutal season. Chips out of London. yeah, that maybe chips out of London. Oh God, I didn't even think about that. Woo-wee. Okay, NYXL. Let's keep it moving. The NYXL had an interesting series of events. So, for the first time ever, Jonak will not play for the NYXL. It's been pretty public. They did a pretty formal goodbye to Jonak. So it's like, as much as he's a free agent because his contract expired, it seems like Jonak has made it clear that he's going to move on and that he's going to join a new team. So that is kind of what is expecting to happen. And as much as I see a lot of Sages in chat, you should be excited. Like, I get really excited when we see these players who are, like, you know, obviously dominant in 2018, 2019. He was the MVP. I want to see him go to a new team. He's been on such a garbage team. NYXL has been so badly run, such a weird hodgepodge of teams with weird decisions. Get him out of NYXL jail. I want to see him go to a championship caliber team and see Jonak fuck. I want to see Jonak fuck again. I want to see his Zen go absolutely nutter. He is, in my opinion, still one of the best flex supports we have in the league. He just hasn't been able to stretch his legs. So hopefully we see that from Jonak, but he is gone. The only player that is currently on the NYXL is Flora, which I agree with. I think we were talking about it. This was kind of a development year for NYXL in 2021, and Flora was really the only one who really impressed us. The tank line was kind of once they brought in Kalios, I think it was, it looked a little bit better. Like, Kalios and Yakpung was somewhat better, but even then it wasn't great. So Guangbong maybe would have been worth keeping. I feel like Guangbong sort of got hit with the Jimmy curse as well, where Guangbong's like a very heavy hit scan player and it just wasn't a hit scan season. So maybe it would have been better to keep Guangbong, but it seems like they want to keep Flora for that. Flora's going to be that, like, tracer hit scan specialist for the team. It'll be interesting to see if Guangbong ends up at a different team. But yeah, so NYXL only has Flora on the books right now. As I said earlier, it is rumored that Kuki might go to NYXL. Take that with what you will. I have no insider information, and let me clarify that as well. I'm not the kind of person who is like messaging GMs, messaging players, finding out. Like, I obviously used to know a lot of shit because I was a player. I don't do that shit anymore. I actually have no idea. The only things that I'm going off is things that are ending up on Twitter and Reddit. So if you're trying to use me as a source or something like that, you're barking up the wrong tree. I have no sources. I'm just stealing other sources and claiming it as my own and making a video about it. So no leaks. Let's talk about the Paris Eternal. Paris Eternal is an interesting one. They have a couple of players that they dropped, which I was surprised by. So I think we can all agree that Paris Eternal had a pretty good season. They went 8-8. No one expected them to do that well. They can definitely have a lot to improve on, and it seems like they're trying to make those changes, but it's interesting. So the players that are coming back is Naga, Dan, Khan, and Dredro. I agree with Khan and Dredro. I think Khan especially was incredible this year. I think Dredro was actually very impressive on the main support as well, and I think if they do want to stay in a European team, I think he's one of the best options that they have. Naga was, I think, also very versatile, great player. It all makes sense. And Don seems to be the big brain behind the operation. As much as I think some people sort of don't think he's the best main tank, I think he's a smart main tank. And I think as much as he might not be mechanically the best, he's a great player. And I think he shows that in his interviews, the way he thinks about the game. He's kind of like, I see myself in Don in a way where it's like, I wasn't ever the best mechanical player, but I was valuable because I had good communication. I understood the game at a high level, and that's how I sort of see Don. And I think that it's important to have players like that. You know, he's not fearless, but he'll do the job and he'll help your team be successful. And he's showing the willingness to play Roadhog, play other things as well. For when you need teams that are going to be able to play all roles, like all tanks, I think Don's a great player for that. And that goes to where I'm sort of surprised. I'm surprised Vistola got dropped, but I guess going into 5v5, one tank, I think they're putting all their eggs in the Don basket. So that seems where it is, which is disappointing because I think Vistola was really good this year. Like, I think obviously an emergency signing with Elivoid having to leave the team, but hopefully Vistola can find a new team. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge, London Spitfire. If you're looking for a new player, Vistola could be the guy. So, Onigod was a little surprised. Sooner, obviously he was a trace player, didn't get a whole lot of playtime, so it's not that surprising. Onigod was interesting, but I think they just believe that they can find a better player. Honestly, I would love to see like a Shax or a Sparker in this lineup. I would love to see Shax or Sparker take this mantle, especially if both teams want to stay European. I think they could really make something work there. So maybe a little bit of European trading in a European trading. We'll see. But that's Paris Eternal. Get Amazed as the coach as well is no longer the head coach, I believe, of this team. He was also dropped. Don't know who their coach is going to be. Shockwave to Paris. Shockwave is another great shout as well. Actually, that's someone who I forgot about, but we have talked about could be a great player to go to European teams. Obviously, Shockwave never got the opportunity to really play with the Philadelphia Fusion, but I have a lot of money in Shockwave stonks. I believe in Shockwave. I think he's fucked in every opportunity he's been given. He did it on Vancouver Titans, and even when he played for Philly, I think he did a good job. His ability to play like the hit scan, but even with like a little bit of echo in there as well, a lot of these teams could get value out of that. So Paris or London, I'm sure, are looking at Shockwave. Let's talk about the Philadelphia Fusion then. Moving it on. Philadelphia Fusion. Where there is Philly, there is Carpe. Carpe is staying on the Philadelphia Fusion, but sadly, we're at an end of an era. EQO, we haven't heard anything, I don't believe, from him, but his option has been declined. So the Carpe EQO duo is no longer a thing. But if I remember correctly, the same thing happened going into this year, where they dropped EQO and they said goodbye to EQO, and then they re-signed EQO coming into the season. So maybe he's coming back. I don't know. He could even go to a European team. EQO is still the same player to me that was from 2018. Sometimes he's really, really good, and he looks like one of the best players in the world. And then the next week he looks lost. Like even this season, I think his Sombra was good, but then he had some really bad games of Sombra. So his consistency has always been a thing for me. But it'll be interesting to see if someone takes a risk on him, or if he even wants to play. Like, I don't even know if EQ wants to play. As I said, he has gone dark. Rascal retired. He is going into coaching. He made a statement about that. And Shockwave, we just talked about, his option was declined. So Philly doesn't want him, and we'll see where Shockwave goes from there. It would be criminal if Shockwave did not find a team. So keep an eye out for those guys. He did post an LFT. Did he? If EQ posted an LFT, I missed that. So he might be LFT. I think there's a lot of teams that would have value in having EQ on their roster. So We'll see. Mano did retire as well. Well, he's sort of going to military service, so it's like soft retiring. Maybe we'll see Mano again in the future. I'm sure Arena is hoping so. But he's going to do military service. So Mano will not be in the next season of Overwatch League. Poker becomes a free agent with the contract expiring. Hopper is a free agent with a contract expiring. Alarm's option gets exercised, and Funny Astro is also a free agent with a contract expiring. So Funny Astro is also an interesting player who could go to one of these European teams. It feels like there is a lot of free agency, and if these teams do want to, these players do want to take a risk and maybe beef up one of these Paris Eternals or London Spitfires, getting some high level veteran players in there could really like move them to the next level. We'll see. We'll see. Maybe Funny Astro wants to stay on Philly and he's just in free agency. We'll see. Funny Astro back to Atlanta? Maybe. We have no idea. As you said, these players who are in free agency, they could be doing anything. They could be signing with the same team. They could be going anywhere. They could be retiring later. We don't know. But that's Philly. The only players that are really still on this team is Alarm and Carpe. And you know what? That's still pretty good. If I had to build around Carpe and Alarm, I think I could make that work. So obviously, Philly could go full Korean. Maybe that could be a decision that's going to be made. We don't know. Car Alarm. I want Poco. Poco's another great player who could go somewhere else. Like, we haven't seen much of Poco. Poco didn't play a map in the Overwatch League this season. And that's hard to come back from that, especially from like a GM and team perspective. It's like, obviously we all know Poco's a great player. Is he still a great player? We don't know. We haven't seen him play for a year. The game evolves so much. It's hard. And so someone might have to take a risk on Poco, but I think, you know, people are willing to do that. Okay, San Francisco Shock fans, look away. It's about to get spicy. San Francisco Shock is blowing up the roster. It's not even like all the players are going into free agency. No, they declined a lot of options. Glister, Nero, Arns, Choi Hyobin, Smurf, FD God, all got declined options, which means that the team has come out and said that they don't want to sign these players. Maybe the players had really high contracts and that the Shock is like, hey, we will sign you. If you go look around, if you want to come back, we'll keep an eye open for you. Maybe some of the players will come back. A little bit of copium there, but we don't know. The craziest one, in my opinion, is Choi Hyobin, for sure. Nero retired. Nero did not retire. Don't listen to that. Choi Hyobin is the one that surprises me the most. I feel like if I'm going into Overwatch 2, I would want Choi Hyobin. But hey, here we are. So they have the only player that they have on their lineup right now is Violet. Violet is the only player that's still under contract, which is funny because I think Violet had a really brutal season. I think he's a great player to build around, but they want to keep Violet. It's not surprising to see them drop all these players. I think they want to go for something new, see something different. I think we're going to see a lot of these players go to different places. I think there's a lot of teams that would really want Glister or Arns, obviously Smurf, Choi. We don't really know what's happening with all these players. We haven't heard much. We talked about it earlier. It seems like Nero has an opportunity. We're all speculating that it's going to be at the Atlanta Reign. Nero did say after the San Francisco Shock got knocked out that he doesn't think he wants to play another season. But he recently tweeted that he has an opportunity and that he's probably going to keep playing in the league. The other big one that all the super fans are just fucking freaking out about is what is going to happen with Super. So Super's option didn't get declined. He is just a free agent. Does the San Francisco Shock want Super back? Are they offering him a contract? Does Super want to keep playing? Because Super, obviously, if you've been living under a rock, has an incredible stream. He's a really funny, entertaining guy, and he could easily retire, become a streamer, and be very successful at it. But is that what he wants to do? Like, does he want to go full-time streamer? That's a commitment. You know, maybe he's a really competitive dude and he just wants to compete. Maybe he wants to keep playing Overwatch 2. We don't know. We haven't heard anything. There have been rumors, like Halo tweeted that Choi Hyobin and Super are going to retire. Take that with a grain of salt. We don't know what's happening. Wait for the player's response. Wait for the team's response before you start assuming these types of things. Okay? But right now, all they have is Violet, and all these players are up for grabs. That got debunked, by the way. It even got debunked. So Super went into him. Okay, there you go. Don't believe everything you see on Twitter or Reddit. Okay. Right now, the only thing we know for sure is that Violet is under a new contract and that everyone here else on this team is a free agent. None of these players have come out saying that they're retiring and that all of these players are available to be picked up. Seoul Dynasty. Let's keep it moving. Seoul Dynasty is an interesting one. After the Seoul Dynasty did not make it to the playoffs, Arnold, their COO, I believe, of the Seoul Dynasty, came out and said massive restructuring is coming for the Seoul Dynasty. To be expected, they kept Fitz and Profit. If they dropped Fitz and Profit, I think everyone would fucking go bonkers. Fitz and Profit are staying. They're under a new contract with the Seoul Dynasty. Not surprising to anyone. These guys are fucking crazy. Probably one of the best DPS doers we have in the league. My biggest problem with Seoul Dynasty is they need better coaches. I want to see new coaches. I want to see them blow up, not the team. I want to see them blow up the coaches. Get completely new coaches. There are some great contenders coaches. There are great options around the place. Please don't sign some coach that is washed out of some other team. Don't sign your assistant coach that also was average. Just get new coaches. I don't know anything about coaches. I don't know anything about the coaches that they previously had. But that's their job to work it out. Just get new ones, because as someone looking in and watching these guys play the game, it doesn't look like they have coaches. So get Toby coach, get anyone coach. I think there's a lot of great options out there. There has to be. Please get new coaches. Gesture's a free agent. Marvel's a free agent. 2U's a free agent. I think they can easily get a great new coach. Like, you can pick up a Muse. I think Muse looked quite good. There is, like, honestly a lot of great options that we can really see from this Seoul Dynasty team that are better than these three players. So get someone new. I will say, I am surprised that they kept Creative. I think there's a lot of great flex supports out there, options. Creative was fine. He had some good moments. He had some bad moments. I'm surprised they committed to Creative this early on. I would prefer to see him go into free agency and then look around. But hey, you know, maybe they like Creative. Maybe Fitz and Profit really like him. They can build off of that. We'll see. But Animo also is a free agent with his option being declined. So right now, the only people that they have to build off is Fitz, Profit, and Creative. I think you can work with that. They can find a really good main support. They can guess things. Like, think about it right now. Like, even with Creative, like, if they got Jexay and then picked up, like, Muse, that's a pretty good 5-man roster. Fitz, Profit, Muse, Jexay, Creative. That's probably a top 5 team, I think, in the league. So hopefully we can see some interesting things for this team. And as I said, for me, it's not even the players that they sign. It's the coaching that I want to really see the overhaul come from. Shanghai Dragons. This is a really uninteresting one in the opposite direction of something that we did with the LA Valiant. They declined the option for develop, which I'm so happy this happened. Just, you're not going to play develop. You have Fletter and Lip. You're never going to play them. But they actually kept Huayu around, which I think actually makes sense because I think they need a Genji player. Fletter's Genji is the only thing that I think he can't really play. So just have Huayu for the Doomfist Genji in case that meta ever happens. You got Fletter, Lip, Huayu. Let Develop go to a different team. Let Develop fuck on a different team. I want to see where Develop goes, really see where he ends up. For tanks, they kept Fate under existing contract, and they kept Void option exercised. I would definitely Fate and Void going to Overwatch 2. Great ideas. Izayaki staying on the team. Lee J got on the team. They kept Molly with the option exercise. I really hope they trade Molly. Like, I would love to see Molly on a different team. Maybe send Molly to, like, a Hangzhou. You know what I mean? Because Molly's Chinese, right? I'm right about that, right? Molly's Chinese. I'd love to see Molly go to a Chinese team. Like, send him somewhere where he's going to play. Right now, it doesn't feel like Molly's ever going to play on this Dragons roster. And it's the same vein of what I was talking about develop. If he's not going to play, like, Molly was, like, having a crazy performance in 2020 towards the end of the season. And then he just, like, rode a bench because he was playing under Izayaki. So I would love to see Molly come out and play on a different team. But for the most part, the Shanghai Dragons are going to be the exact same team that we saw. Interestingly enough, I believe 2 of their coaches, Ms. Liz fact check me, I think 2 of their assistant coaches left the Dragons to try and get head coach gigs as well. which I think is cool because, as I said, NYXL, Seoul Dynasty, some of these Guangzhou Charge, there's a lot of coaching options open. I would love to see Dongsu and Jay Phil move to teams where they can be head coaches, really shine. Like, I worked with Dongsu on Valiant. He's just a really smart guy. Like, he just understands the game. He just like talking to him, you could tell he had a good brain for it. I think he'd be a great head coach. He's obviously played on a championship caliber team now, a coach under a championship caliber. Promote these kind of people to head coaches of your teams. Please, these other teams. So it'll be interesting to see what Shanghai Dragons does from here. Because they need to pick up new coaches, assistant coaches. They have already signed Pavan, which was a weird one for me. I don't love it. Obviously, he has a lot of experience in early NYXL in 2018, did London Spitfire in 2020, which wasn't successful, and then he went to Valorant. We'll see. We'll see how that works out. That's the Shanghai Dragons. I think there's a lot of questions about it, but hey, we'll see. Custa, stop being biased. NYXL did good. Okay, cool. Toronto Defiant. So Aspire becomes a free agent. That isn't too surprising. I didn't even realize he was still under a full-time contract. I thought, I didn't even know he would be in this list. Aspire, someone needs to throw a bag at Aspire. There is a lot of Western teams with a lot of question marks right now. Someone sign Aspire. It would be criminal if Aspire doesn't get to play again after putting on such a good performance for Toronto. Obviously, like, Logix came out and talked a lot about how isolated he felt from the team. Aspire just fucking went with it and owned. Aspire to Florida, maybe. If Florida goes Western, I think Aspire could definitely do good things for them. But I don't care where. I don't care who. Just someone throw a bag at Aspire. He deserves it. He had such a good season. He doesn't deserve to be dropped. Hisu, I believe, is the only player that is returning for the Toronto Defiant with his 2022 option exercised. I think that's fair. Hisu was fucking bonkers at moments. Logix becomes free agent, not too surprising. And Nice also goes into free agency with his existing contract expired. I would love to see them pick up someone other than Nice. Nice was fine, but maybe if like Toronto can't find a better option, Nice is a fine player. But I think if they really want to start moving into higher levels, like if they can get Yaki, as Farah is saying. That's pretty fucking good. If you can get Yaki, I think, and that's why I think Yaki's a pretty hot commodity for a lot of teams. There's a lot of good flex DPS that are sort of in the market right now, so it'd be cool to see them go from there. Michelle became a free agent and Sato became a free option. Interesting, with both of their options declined. Is KDG still the head coach of Toronto Defiant? Have they said anything about that? Yes, so he is still the one making the decisions. So it's interesting that Sato did get his option declined if KDG is becoming the head coach. So it seems like they want to look for other options. I wonder if they have people in mind. Honestly, if I was Toronto Defiant as well, I would do the exact same thing. There is about to be so many available tanks, I think, in the league, that I don't think you want to hamstring yourself and force yourself to go with Michelle or Sato early. Maybe there's going to be a couple of really good options for tanks that are going to be available that you wouldn't expect to be available. And then if worse is the worst, you can probably re-sign Sato. Like, Sato's probably going to go looking around. Sato is a very flexible and talented player, so we'll see. They're going to build around Hisu with KDG and Yang1 as the coaches for now. Interesting. And in supports, they all became free agents with their contracts expiring. So that doesn't mean that they're not going to come back. It just means that they haven't been re-signed. I think Lastro's really talented. I think we can all agree he's a really good flex support. Aztak and Unson J, they were fine. I don't think they ever really impressed me that hard, but they were fine. Do you hear that Super is apparently LFT? Yes. All right, Vancouver Titans. They're blowing it up. They literally have no players. I believe they said that they're blowing it up. I don't believe we have any idea of what direction they're going in right now. I believe that right now we're in the darkness again. If you're a Vancouver Titans fan, it's been a trip, man. You're like, hey, you know what? I started watching the league in 2019. You know what? I'm going to go for this new Vancouver Titans team, which picked up Runaway. That's a lot of hype. Yeah, this is going to be my team. And then it just went off. It all went downhill from there. Unfortunately, haven't really been able to rebuild ever since they had that whole debacle in the 2020 season where they dropped their whole roster, picked up a contenders contenders team. I like that they're blowing it up. I think that this team did need to be blown up. I'd love to see Terry go to a different team. I would love to see him on a Korean team, but I don't know if anyone's going to take a risk on Teru. Because as much as you look good for the Vancouver Titans, there's a lot of great flex DPS out there. But I love Teru. I played a lot of rank with Teru. I like him. So yeah, like he could go to NYXL. There could be a lot of things. So you could definitely grab some pieces from this team. There are some good pieces, but Vancouver Titans, they're blowing it up. I hope they just sign a really good contenders team. Just a team that's probably going to get a few wins. I don't expect them to rebuild and throw a bunch of money at it. That just doesn't really seem in line with how they've managed a team recently. But I want to see them create a competitive team. We said going into this season that Vancouver Titans were going to be 20th. They pretty much were. I want to see a better foot forward from the management this year. All right. Washington Justice, last one. So, I think we can all agree Washington Justice were incredibly disappointing. They haven't said anything about their coaching staff, but this is another team that I think had some pretty bad coaching decisions throughout the entire season. The idea to bench Decay, like Decay is a player that should just never be benched. And I legitimately think that they would benefit from just having Decay be the hit scan tracer player, but also play anything that they ever need and never bench Decay. And then just have two other DPS, have a flex DPS, and maybe a hit scan DPS or a tracer player if you ever need to do both. They picked up Ty Dollar from Glads. So that's all they got. Maybe I'm surprised they kept Jerry. I would prefer, I love Jerry, but I just don't know when Jerry would ever play. I would, maybe he's a good bench player if Jerry's just happy being on the bench and just maybe if a double hit scan meta comes around, he plays. But I think for the most part, they're just going to play Assassin Decay. I like both of these players. I think it's a good combo. Assassin, I want to see some more consistency from Assassin going into next season, but I can understand why they took the risk on it. But as long as they have Decay Assassin, having Jerry is fine. 2 becomes free agent, option declined. I think that speaks for itself. I think he didn't have a thing. Fury gets option exercised, and Mag is in a new contract. Fury and Mag, I think, are two great players to have on your tank line going into next season. That's makes sense to me. And then we go into the support line. We said going into 2021, or at least I did in everything that I said, my biggest worry for the Justice was their backline. Closer and Bebe never really impressed me that much. Closer obviously played for Dallas Fuel and some other teams. He was fine. And then Bebe was the same. They were both fine. And I think that was an issue for the Justice this season. They just never really stood out for the team. Compared to some of the other backlines in the league, they just weren't that impressed. And I think Washington Justice are going to keep throwing a bag at the problem because I assume these players are getting paid dumb contracts. They should throw a bag at some good supports. There's Jonak in the pool, who's an available flex support right now. There's some great, O2 Blast, fucking Talon. There's some great supports in both of those teams. Like, if you watch those finals recently, there are some great players and contenders that they could promote. There's like Jexay. There are really good options. Jonak Jexay, right? Like, you just run Jonak Jexay as a backline. I'd be down. Twilight, yeah, fuck, I forgot about Twilight. Iris. Like, there are great supports that are available right now. I'm glad that they didn't decide to keep Bebe and Closer. There are better options out there in the pool. Lastro, yeah, Galastro is a good one as well. So I'm glad. I like the direction that Washington Justice are going. As I said, I didn't love their coaching this year. I think there were some very questionable decisions, like, when they went into the playoffs and only played Brawl. Like, maybe they felt like that was their only option. But like the way they got to the playoffs was playing the Winston Moira shit. And then they just came to the playoffs and played Brawl against... They were like the 5th best Brawl team in the playoffs, and they decided to come in and only play Brawl on every single map. It just feels like... It just didn't feel good to me. So maybe we'll see them do something interesting. But I think Washington Justice can be a good team, and I'll be excited for this roster going into next year, because they have great players. But I just hope they don't have a disappointing season like they did this season, because even though they made it to the playoffs, and this goes back to the person who said like NYXL was good, like, good is relative. right? Washington Justice made it to the playoffs. They came 7th to 8th. But for the roster that they had, they should have done better. NYXL was in a rebuilding season, but they made some really bad choices and some really bad decisions, and there was some really big issues with those teams. And that is what we're talking about when we say teams need to do better in certain aspects. Because, like, we have certain expectations for certain teams, and a lot of teams didn't live up to it this season. But that's it. That's the highlight, number one, of this offseason. I'm going to be doing more of these episodes where we just sort of talk about everything that's happened. Obviously, this is just throwing everything at you for the first one. But this is essentially where we are. We're through the first phase of going through the Rosterpocalypse in the season where everyone goes into free agency. We see which teams are getting signed, and then we have a lot of rumors. I'll probably do it again once enough important players have been signed. We start to see teams sort of start coming together, and there's enough to talk about. But I hope you found it interesting. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. What are the teams that you think need to sign these players? What players do you think are being slighted? Which players do you want to be signed for what teams? Just let me know. Thank you very much for watching. It's going to be a crazy offseason, and I will see you guys next time.